The 4th of July is fast approaching. And so we're learning about Lex Luger and the Lex Express and what happened on the 4th of July in 1993. Now, Lex Luger was a big star in the NWA and WCW, even holding the world title. But he decided he wanted a change of scenery. Either that or didn't want to wrestle that much anymore, and decided to go to Vince McMahon's new World Bodybuilding Federation and help host the show. So he dropped the world title to Sting and went to the World Bodybuilding Federation and was helping host the show and was going to pose at their first pay-per-view. Now, I don't know whose idea it was to have a bodybuilding show, weekly show, or bodybuilding pay-per-view, because both of those things sound boring as shit. But this was Vince McMahon's newest business venture. The problem was, or to have Lex Luger help announce it, but the problem was Lex Luger got in a motorcycle accident before this could happen. And by the time he was recovered, the World Bodybuilding Federation did not exist anymore, because no one wants to watch a bodybuilding competition on a weekly show or on a pay-per-view because it sounds boring as shit. So Lex Luger decided to become a wrestler again. Going by the name The Narcissist, he would be managed by Bobby Heenan and would come out and pose and look at himself in a full-length mirror and then wrestle, which was very close to Lex Luger's actual personality, according to many of the wrestlers who wrestled with him. His finisher was a running forearm, and it was said that it was so dangerous because he had to have a steel rod put into his forearm. So they made him wear an elbow pad, which he frequently took off. Now, the champion at the time was Yokozuna, a Samoan who was actually a member of the Anoa wrestling family, along with Roman Reigns, Rikishi, the Usos, and many, many others, who was actually playing a Japanese man who was like a evil foreigner. And Lex Luger, and he actually took the belt off of Bret Hart, and then we went over that. Hogan beat him, and then Hogan dropped the belt back to Yokozuna. So Vince McMahon, after Hogan left, was looking for his next big face. And Vince McMahon, who comes at every big muscly guy, looked at Lex Luger. So he had this brilliant idea. On July 4th, 1993, Yokozuna was going to have a challenge. Any wrestler who could body slam him would get a shot at the title. Now, many wrestlers tried, and even some famous athletes tried, but none did. Lex Luger came down in a helicopter, which almost made Vince McMahon come on air, wearing a red, white, and blue shirt, blue jeans, and cowboy boots, hit Yokozuna with a forearm, and then body slammed him. Now, Lex Luger has said, when Vince McMahon called him into his office and said, "You're going to body slam Yokozuna and become the poster boy for America," he didn't think it would work, because he had just been playing the narcissist, and he didn't think people would buy it. But Vince McMahon said, "Trust me, I can sell anything." and Vince McMahon can sell anything. Lex Luger also said the cowboy boots were a little worn that day, and it was like being on ice skates in the ring. And so he was afraid Yokozuna was going to fall on him. And when he got him slammed, it was a smile of relief and excitement. This led to the Lex Express, a big bus decked out in red, white, and blue that Lex Luger rode on, slept on, mainly for pictures, because they also wanted him to stay in hotels and travel by plane. And on the Lex Express, when he'd finally meet up with the bus, he'd go to hospitals, meet up with children, go to autograph signings on the bus, even though he may have traveled by plane, and meet up with the fans all across the country on the Lex Express, because it was his get to know the country tour. He'd always be decked out in red, white, and blue. The bus was decked out in red, white, and blue. It was like a whistle stop tour for a president, I guess. Except for instead of the president staying on the train, he'd meet the train in cities. There's one very famous picture of Lex Luger in front of Mount Rushmore doing the double guns. That picture, Lex Luger said, they wanted him to take a picture with the Lex Express bus and him in front of Mount Rushmore, but there was a bunch of bikers in front of Mount Rushmore, and they didn't have any security to clear it. So he climbed out the fire escape and did the double guns on top of the bus. Now, this all led to SummerSlam, where he faced Yokozuna for the title, the world title. Now, this was a boring match, because Lex, not a great wrestler. Yoko, big, can't hardly move. So, bit of a boring match. Lex eventually hit him with the forearm, which knocked Yoko out of the ring, and Yoko didn't respond by the 10 count, and Lex won by countout, which didn't give him the title. The reason being for this is because Vince wanted Lex Luger to wait and win the title at WrestleMania 10, a full 9 months away, because it would be a bigger event. The problem is, people stopped caring after SummerSlam. Though all the face wrestlers came out and cheered, and there are banners and streamers and confetti, and they cheered that Lex beat Yokozuna, it really was kind of a big hype for nothing. Now, on the other side of things, we had Bret Hart, who was getting over naturally with the fans because he was putting on great matches. And he was a great worker. He was putting on great matches. He was naturally charismatic, actually more charismatic than Lex Luger. And people were really starting to love Bret Hart. So come the Royal Rumble, Vince had a little test. Vince had Bret Hart and Lex Luger go over the ropes at the same time, and referees raised both of their hands. Lex Luger got some cheers. Bret Hart got thunderous applause. So guess which one won the title at WrestleMania 10? Bret Hart. And he became the big star of the company. Along with wrestling Owen in an earlier match at WrestleMania 10, Lex Luger wrestled Yokozuna at WrestleMania 10, but got disqualified by Curt Hennig, and he went on to team with British Bulldog as Power and Glory, fight for the Intercontinental title, but he never held a title in WWE. Bret went on to a star-studded career, and we all know what happened to Bret Hart. Lex Luger would appear on the first Nitro back in going back to WCW, and appear on the first Nitro, taking a heavy pay cut, doing it, and would have a decent career in WCW, but in WWF, he never held a title. And it all probably came down to the fact that Vince didn't pull the trigger at SummerSlam when Lex was popular. So that is the story of Lex Luger and the Lex Express. Join me later in the week where we are looking at Birth of a Nation from 1915. It reminded me of some of the things I love about those old black and white movies, like the fist fights, the historical inaccuracies, and the fact that at times they're just silly. And it reminded me of some of the things I hate about those old movies, like they're racist and their historical inaccuracies, and at times they're just plain mean. So see you then.